It was our 10th anniversary, and I had planned the perfect dinner. Little did I know, my husband's idea of a celebratory toast would turn my world upside down, revealing a betrayal so deep it left me gasping for air. My name is Sarah, and up until about a week ago, I thought I had a pretty good life. I was married to Mark for 10 years. 10 years! It sounds like a lifetime when you say it out loud, doesn't it? We had our ups and downs, sure, what marriage doesn't. But overall, I felt like we had built something solid, something lasting. We had a comfortable home, good friends, and a routine that, while sometimes predictable, was also comforting. Our 10th anniversary was coming up, and I wanted to make it special. Mark and I aren't really the big, extravagant gesture type of couple. We appreciate the quiet moments, the shared laughter over a silly movie, a knowing glance across a crowded room. But 10 years felt like a milestone, something worth celebrating a little more than usual. So I planned a dinner party. Nothing too over the top, just a gathering of our closest friends and family at our place. I spent weeks agonizing over the menu, wanting everything to be perfect. I finally settled on a fancy Italian spread, Mark's favorite. I even splurged on a beautiful new dress, a deep emerald green that made my eyes pop. The day of the party, I was a bundle of nervous energy and excitement. I flitted around the house, making sure every detail was just right. The flowers were perfectly arranged, the candles were strategically placed to create a warm glow, and the aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air. Mark, bless his heart, tried to help, but he mostly just stayed out of my way, knowing I had a very specific vision for the evening. As our guests started to arrive, the house filled with laughter and chatter. It was wonderful to see all the people we loved gathered in one place, celebrating our milestone with us. My parents were there, beaming with pride. Mark's sister, Emily, and her husband, Tom, brought a bottle of champagne that cost more than my weekly grocery bill. Even our old college friends, who now lived in different states, had made the effort to come. The evening flowed beautifully. The food was delicious, the wine was flowing, and the conversation was lively. Mark and I exchanged sweet glances throughout the night, a silent acknowledgement of the journey we had shared and the love that still bound us together. At least, that's what I thought. After dinner, as everyone was lingering around the table, sipping on coffee and dessert, Mark stood up. He tapped his spoon against his glass, and the room quieted down. My heart fluttered with anticipation. I knew he wasn't one for grand speeches, but I was curious to see what he had planned. He cleared his throat and smiled, his eyes meeting mine across the table. "Wow, 10 years," he began, his voice a little husky with emotion. "It's hard to believe it's been that long. When I think back to when Sarah and I first met," he went on to tell a sweet, slightly embarrassing story about our first encounter at a college party. Everyone laughed, and I felt a warm glow spread through me. This was it, I thought. He was going to say something really lovely, something about our future together. But then his tone shifted. He chuckled, a strange, almost nervous sound. "You know," he continued, "marriage is a funny thing. It's all about commitment, compromise, and sometimes a little bit of exploration." A ripple of unease went through the room. I frowned, confused by his choice of words. What was he getting at? He took a sip of his wine and then looked directly at me, his smile faltering slightly. "Speaking of exploration," he said, his voice taking on a strange, almost boastful tone, "I think it's fair to say that over the past few months, I've been thoroughly exploring a new landscape." My blood ran cold. My smile froze on my face. I stared at him, my mind racing, trying to make sense of his words. What was he implying? He didn't leave me in suspense for long. He actually had the audacity to wink. "Her name is Chloe," he announced, as if he were revealing some exciting piece of news. Well, let's just say she's a lot younger and more adventurous than Sarah." The room fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. My parents' faces went white. Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Our friends exchanged horrified glances. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My ears were ringing and my vision blurred. Had I heard him correctly? Had my husband, the man I had shared my life with for the past 10 years, just announced to our closest friends and family that he was having an affair? At our anniversary dinner? I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, and I gripped the edge of the table for support. Mark, oblivious to the devastation he had just wrought, continued to ramble on about Chloe. He described her as vibrant, exciting, and everything Sarah isn't anymore. The casual cruelty in his voice was like a physical blow. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision even further. I looked around the table, seeing the shock and pity in the faces of my loved ones. My mother was openly crying, her hand clasped over her mouth. My father looked like he wanted to punch Mark through the wall. Emily, bless her heart, was the first to break the stunned silence. "Mark!" she exclaimed, her voice sharp with anger. "What the hell is wrong with you? How could you say something like that?" He shrugged, a smug look on his face. "What? It's the truth. Sarah and I have grown apart. Chloe and I have a real connection." "A real connection?" I finally managed to croak out, my voice trembling. "You call sleeping with some girl behind my back a real connection?" He rolled his eyes. "Don't be so dramatic, Sarah. It's not the end of the world." Not the end of the world. My world had just shattered into a million pieces, and he was telling me not to be dramatic? I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the wooden floor. My legs felt shaky, but I forced myself to stand tall. I looked at Mark, really looked at him. And for the first time in a long time, I saw him for who he truly was. A selfish, arrogant, and utterly heartless man. "Get out," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. He blinked at me, as if he hadn't understood. "What?" "I said, get out," I repeated, my voice louder this time. "Get out of my house. Get out of my life." He scoffed. "You don't mean that, Sarah. We've been together for 10 years. 10 years that you just threw away with your little exploration," I retorted, the bitterness in my voice palpable. "Now get out." He hesitated for a moment, a flicker of something, maybe regret, maybe just annoyance, crossing his face. But then he seemed to realize I was serious. He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and without another word, walked out the door. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. My friends and family stared at me, their faces a mixture of concern and disbelief. "Sarah, are you okay?" my mother asked, her voice choked with tears. I shook my head, unable to speak. I felt numb, like I was watching everything happen from behind a thick pane of glass. Emily rushed over to me, wrapping me in a tight hug. "I am so sorry, Sarah," she whispered in my ear. "He's a complete idiot. You deserve so much better." I leaned into her embrace, finally letting the tears fall. They streamed down my face, hot and angry, a physical manifestation of the pain that was tearing through me. The rest of the evening was a blur. My friends and family rallied around me, offering words of comfort and support. They helped me clean up, their presence a silent promise that I wasn't alone in this. After everyone had left, I wandered through the house, feeling like a stranger in my own home. Every corner held memories of Mark and me, memories that now felt tainted, poisoned by his betrayal. I went into our bedroom, the room we had shared for 10 years. His side of the bed looked untouched, his clothes still hanging in the closet. A wave of anger washed over me, hot and fierce. How dare he? How dare he destroy our life, our history, with his selfish actions? I marched over to his closet and started pulling out his clothes, throwing them onto the bed in a heap. Then I went to his dresser and emptied out his drawers. Every shirt, every pair of socks, every stupid tie that I had painstakingly picked out for him over the years went into the growing pile. By the time I was done, the bed was overflowing with his belongings. I stood there, panting, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction amidst the pain. This was the first step, I realized. The first step towards reclaiming my life, my home, my happiness. I grabbed some large trash bags from the garage and started stuffing his things into them. It felt cathartic, like I was physically removing him from my space, from my mind. As I hauled the last bag out to the curb, a thought struck me. Trash bags seemed too temporary. This wasn't just garbage. This was the physical representation of my broken trust, my shattered dreams. This deserved a more permanent disposal. That's when I remembered the dumpster down the street, the one the construction crew had been using for the past few weeks. A slow smile spread across my face. Perfect. I wrestled the heavy bags into my car and drove down the street. The dumpster loomed large and dark, a gaping maw ready to swallow the remnants of my failed marriage. With a grunt, I heaved each bag over the side, watching as they landed with a satisfying thud amongst the other debris. As I drove back home, a sense of lightness washed over me. It was a small act, I knew, but it felt significant. It was a declaration, a sign that I was done. Done with Mark, done with his lies, done with pretending that everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. Now, as I sit here in my quiet house, the silence no longer suffocating but strangely peaceful, I know that the road ahead won't be easy. There will be pain, there will be tears, there will be moments when I doubt myself and wonder if I made the right decision. But then, I remember Mark's smug face, his cruel words, and the image of his belongings disappearing into that dumpster. And I know, with a certainty that settles deep in my bones, that I did. I deserve better than that. I deserve a love that is honest, respectful, and true. And I will find it, even if it takes me another 10 years. The days that followed were a strange mix of intense emotion and a surprising sense of calm. The initial shock and hurt were still there, a dull ache in my chest that wouldn't quite go away. But underneath it, a new feeling was starting to bubble up, a sense of liberation. It was like a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying had been lifted. The phone calls started almost immediately. First, it was Mark, his voice a pathetic whine as he tried to explain himself, to somehow minimize the enormity of his betrayal. He talked about feeling lost, about Chloe being a temporary distraction, about how much he still loved me and wanted to make things work. I listened for a while, my jaw tight, my heart cold. Then, I simply hung up. I had nothing left to say to him. His words were just noise, meaningless attempts to manipulate me into forgiving the unforgivable. Next came his mother, bless her well-meaning but ultimately misguided heart. She pleaded with me to reconsider, to think about the 10 years we had invested in our marriage. She reminded me of all the good times, the holidays, the milestones we had shared. She even suggested that maybe I was overreacting, that men sometimes made mistakes. I sighed, the weight of her expectations pressing down on me. His mistake was announcing his affair at our anniversary dinner in front of everyone we know, Carol, I said, my voice weary. There's no coming back from that. My parents were my rocks through it all. They came over every day, offering practical help and unwavering emotional support. My dad, usually a man of few words, kept giving me these tight, comforting hugs. My mom, though heartbroken for me, was fierce in her defense, telling anyone who would listen what a low-life Mark was. Emily was also incredible. She called me constantly, checking in, offering to run errands, even suggesting we have a girls' night out to take my mind off things. I wasn't quite ready for that yet, but her support meant the world to me. Of course, there were also the whispers, the concerned inquiries from mutual friends. I kept my responses brief and to the point. Yes, Mark and I were separated. Yes, it was because he had been having an affair. No, I wasn't interested in discussing the details. Social media became a strange landscape to navigate. Mark, in a truly baffling move, had started posting cryptic, self-pitying messages on Facebook about difficult times and finding his truth. I resisted the urge to publicly call him out, knowing that airing our dirty laundry online wouldn't do anyone any good. Instead, I limited my time on social media, focusing on the real-life support system I had around me. A few days after the dinner party, I received a text message from an unknown number. It simply read, "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I had no idea he would do that to you." Curiosity piqued, I replied, "Who is this?" The response came back almost immediately. "It's Chloe. We met a few times. He told me he and his wife were separated." My blood boiled. Separated? We were sitting across from each other at our anniversary dinner just days ago. The audacity of this man knew no bounds. I typed back a scathing reply, telling her exactly what I thought of her and her role in the destruction of my marriage. I didn't hold back, letting all my anger and hurt pour into those text messages. To her credit, she didn't try to argue. She simply replied with a brief message. "I truly am sorry. I was naive." Whether she was truly sorry or just trying to absolve herself of guilt, I didn't know and, frankly, didn't care. The damage was done. As the initial shock began to wear off, the practicalities of my new reality started to sink in. We had a house, joint bank accounts, shared possessions. We had built a life together, and now I had to figure out how to untangle it all. I contacted a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Evans, who came highly recommended. She listened patiently to my story, her expression hardening as I recounted Mark's public humiliation. She assured me that I had grounds for a divorce and that she would help me navigate the process. Dealing with the legal aspects was draining, but it also felt empowering. It was another step towards taking control of my life, of severing the ties that bound me to Mark. A few weeks into our separation, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Chloe. She showed up at my doorstep, looking pale and nervous, clutching a small bouquet of white lilies. I hesitated for a moment, my initial instinct to slam the door in her face, but then curiosity got the better of me. I reluctantly let her in. She stood awkwardly in my living room, her eyes darting around as if she expected Mark to jump out from behind the sofa. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want?" I asked, my tone cool and guarded. She took a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize. Truly apologize. Mark, he wasn't honest with me. He told me you two had been separated for months. He painted a picture of a miserable, loveless marriage." I scoffed. "And you believed him?" She looked down at her hands, her cheeks flushing. "I know it sounds stupid, but he was convincing. He's a good liar." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "You have no idea." We stood in silence for a moment, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife. Then she looked up at me, her eyes filled with a surprising amount of sincerity. "He's done this before, you know. Not publicly like this, but he's cheated on his partners in the past. I found some messages on his phone with other women." My heart sank. Had there been signs I had missed? Had I been so blind, so trusting, that I hadn't seen the truth? Chloe went on to tell me about her brief relationship with Mark, how he had showered her with attention and promises, only to become distant and evasive when she started asking questions. She had eventually stumbled upon the messages and realized that she was just one of many. As she spoke, a strange sense of camaraderie developed between us. We were both victims of Mark's deceit, two women who had been manipulated and hurt by the same man. Before she left, Chloe handed me a small USB drive. "I copied everything," she said. "The messages, some emails. Maybe it will help you with the divorce." I took the drive, a wave of gratitude washing over me. This was unexpected, but it could be valuable. The information on the USB drive was damning. It confirmed everything Chloe had said and more. There were messages with multiple women, spanning back years, some even from before our anniversary dinner. It was a sickening testament to Mark's infidelity. Armed with this new evidence, my lawyer was even more confident about the divorce proceedings. We moved forward swiftly, and Mark, faced with the undeniable proof of his lies, didn't put up much of a fight. The divorce was finalized a few months later. It was a strange feeling, signing those papers, officially ending a chapter of my life. There was sadness, of course, for the dreams we had shared that would never come to fruition. But there was also a profound sense of relief, of finally being free from the toxic relationship that had held me back for so long. As for Mark, he moved in with Chloe for a while, but I heard through the grapevine that their relationship didn't last. Apparently, his pattern of deceit and manipulation eventually caught up with him. I didn't feel any satisfaction in their breakup, just a quiet sense of closure. Life after Mark was different. It took time to heal, to rebuild my confidence, to learn to trust again. There were days when I felt lonely, when I missed the comfort and familiarity of our life together. But then I would remember the humiliation at our anniversary dinner, the cold indifference in his eyes, and the freedom I now felt, and I knew I had made the right choice. I reconnected with old friends, pursued hobbies I had neglected during my marriage, and even started thinking about dating again. It was scary, venturing back into the world of romance, but it was also exciting. I was no longer defined by my relationship with Mark. I was Sarah, a woman who had been through a difficult experience, but had emerged stronger and more resilient. One sunny Saturday morning, a few months after the divorce was final, I was cleaning out the garage when I stumbled upon a box of Mark's old belongings that I had forgotten to throw out. It was filled with random things: old sports equipment, college textbooks, some sentimental trinkets from our early years together. I hesitated for a moment, a wave of nostalgia washing over me. Should I keep some of these things? Were they a part of my history too? But then I remembered the dumpster. The image of those trash bags disappearing into its depths brought a smile to my face. That had felt so good, so final. I opened the box and started sorting through the contents. The sports equipment went into one pile for donation. The textbooks could probably be recycled. But the sentimental trinkets, those were harder. There was a small heart-shaped stone we had found on our honeymoon, a faded photograph from our wedding day, a ticket stub from the first concert we had ever attended together. For a moment I considered keeping them, tucking them away in a box in the attic. But then I realized that holding on to these things would be holding on to the past, to a version of Mark and our relationship that no longer existed. With a sigh, I gathered the trinkets and walked out to the curb. The garbage truck was due to arrive any minute. I lifted the lid of the trash can and dropped them in, one by one. As I watched the last item disappear, I felt a final sense of closure. The past was the past. It had shaped me, but it didn't define me. I was ready to move on, to create a new future for myself, one filled with honesty, respect, and genuine connection. The dumpster had served its purpose, a temporary receptacle for the immediate aftermath of Mark's betrayal. But the trash can, that was where the remnants of the past truly belonged. And as I closed the lid, I knew that I was finally free. Free to heal, free to grow, and free to love again when the time was right. And this time, I would choose someone who truly deserved my heart.